interested in it, Brian's talking about it. You're with Brian Kilmeade.
Mr. President, good morning. Are you happy with your legal team?
They're doing a very good job.
Did you watch the trial?
We have a great case.
And that's President of the United States in Davos when asked about what was going on with the impeachment as opposed to the bilaterals and the trade deals and the would-be tariffs on the EU. He said, I watched a little of it. We have a good team. We have a great case. Senator Tom Cotton was in the arena. He sat and sat and sat for 12 to 13 hours from 1 o'clock in the afternoon till 1 o'clock in the morning. Senator, congratulations on your endurance. I know you sat there and done this before. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, you've shown great patience and endurance. Was this tougher?
Hey, Brian, good morning. It certainly might have been more intellectually dull and painful than standing at attention for a long funeral or ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery or laying in a hide site for an ambush in Iraq for 24 hours. But no, it's not that hard to sit in a comfy chair in an air-conditioned chamber. A lot of people have it much harder. But I do think that you had a good contrast there to start. I mean, the president has been in Davos the last couple of days to talk to foreign leaders about the success that America has had in growing our economy and especially seeing wages and benefits grow for working-class voters, in part because of the good trade deals that he's just signed in the last couple of weeks. And then in contrast, you have Chuck Schumer and Adam Schiff going into the night, just laying bare how slapdash and rushed the House impeachment case was. It's a very interesting contrast, I think, that most voters will take note of.
So I know I looked at you as, and I don't think you'll mind this label, as a conservative that I think would be someone who's not worried about an election, because you're not, but that's not the case with Susan Collins, not the same case with Cory Gardner, and some moderates like, I guess you would put Mitt Romney and Senator Portman seem to have been a little agitated by the Mitch McConnell's hard line, and on the Republicans seem to have given in a little bit. They say now the Mitch McConnell has backed off 24 hours to make your case. He'll give them 3 days to make their opening statements, which I imagine you want to pass out. But he's given a little bit. Have you had a chance to talk to the moderates who are in dogfights to keep their seats and to keep you guys in minority? Do you understand their mindset?
Sure, Brian. We had long debates yesterday, plenty of time for conversation. So, yes, the resolution that Senator McConnell introduced was then reintroduced with two changes. One dealt with the record from the House, Brian. At first, we were not going to admit it automatically into evidence, and that was at the request of the president's lawyers, who have numerous objections, especially hearsay objections.
Yeah.
But we decided that probably the better way to do that would be go ahead and admit it into evidence pending the White House lawyers' ability to challenge parts of that record as not admissible for things like hearsay. And then I think just in terms of the amount of time, both sides were going to have 24 hours, just like the sides that did in the Clinton trial, whether it was 2 days or 3 days, is immaterial to me. But if people want to spread it out over 3 days so we don't have a 13-hour day like we did last night, that's fine with me as well. So minor changes, but still the point is that we're following the exact precedent that was good enough for Bill Clinton. It's good enough for Donald Trump. And if you want to know what Chuck Schumer believed in 1999 when he was in the Senate for the Clinton impeachment trial, just think of the exact opposite of whatever he says now.
Right. And the same thing with others on the right. They were in the exact opposite seat. Yeah. But we get it. There are some differences, but there are some ridiculous similarities. It also goes to show, Senator, while you were basically in high school, these guys are in the same slots in the 90s. It's amazing how little turnover there is. There's just different minorities, majorities, and presidents. So we do have a contrast with the trade deals being cut and what's going on with impeachment. But do we understand what could we expect today if we tune in?
So we'll start around 1 o'clock today, Brian. The House will start its case. As I said, it'll have up to 24 hours, and they'll be arguing for their articles of impeachment. But, Brian, we got a pretty good preview of it last night as well.
I know.
One thing that struck me is just how unprepared the House Democrats were to make their case. Almost everything they said came back to this point. We don't have evidence that the president committed high crimes and misdemeanors. We want to subpoena this person. We want to subpoena that person. We demand these documents. They don't have a good answer, Brian, for why they didn't pursue those documents and subpoena those witnesses in the House, and if challenged, go to court to enforce their subpoenas. That's exactly what happened throughout the Clinton independent counsel investigation when Clinton fought like a cornered rat against Ken Starr, went up to the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court multiple times, and it's exactly what happened in the Nixon impeachment investigation as well. I mean, it gets back to what one of the House Democrats said last night. If we had taken our time to do our work well in the House, then Donald Trump might have been reelected because we wouldn't have been finished by the election. That's really what this is all about, Brian. It's about preventing the American people from electing Donald Trump to a second term.
So we're talking to Senator Tom Cotton. Senator, the other thing that's happening that's affecting me, I got this email a couple of days ago. I'm in Orlando with my daughter's soccer team, and they said, get here over 2 hours to the airport because of this virus. And they're checking all airports because of this coronavirus. You've tweeted about this. What can you tell our listeners about how deadly this is and what the reality is?
Brian, there's still a lot unknown, but here's what we do know. The Chinese Communist Party has once again been caught red-handed covering up, suppressing, and censoring a serious public health risk, which could increasingly be a global public health risk. For weeks, China did not come clean about the coronavirus that they first said was only being passed from animals to human in a seafood market in Wuhan in China. But now we know, because they finally come clean to an extent, not fully, that it is increasingly being passed from person to person. We had our first confirmed U.S. case happen just in the last couple of days, and it is spreading around the globe. This is very much like what happened with SARS about 15 years ago, and China has learned nothing, and they've concealed almost everything. First off, our global public health authorities in the United States have to work to get this under control. But second, there needs to be serious consequences for Chinese malfeasance yet again.
I understand, and you tweeted about that today. So we're going to continue to monitor that. In fact, Fox News is covering it as we speak. And so that just shows you're just ahead of the game. And there is some concern, and it's affecting everybody because it's going to affect everyone from the TSA agents to the anyone heading to airports, any public facility, especially international flights, obviously. Senator Cotton, a couple of things happened. The president gave a press conference. Word is his mood is great. He loves these bilaterals. He loves meeting these leaders. He loves talking about his success. We know that. He always has, whether it's casino or whether it's The Apprentice or whether it's the country. He also likes doing deals. He's talking about Pakistan. He's talking about Iraq. He got a question about the 12 head injuries that our men and women might have suffered when the Iranians rocketed our base in Iraq. What can you tell us about that? The president said it's not a big deal. Is it?
Well, so, Brian, first off, first reports, even about casualties, are often wrong. I remember one time when my Humvee got blown up in Iraq, I sent up a report that said no casualties. And 45 minutes later, I learned that we had a casualty. That's because my gunner had been hit in the hand with shrapnel. I simply didn't recognize it. That is especially the case when you're talking about the kind of brain injuries or concussions that some of these soldiers have reportedly incurred, because it's not a visible physical casualty, and sometimes the indicators don't manifest for hours or even days. It's not surprising that the Department of Defense didn't report these up immediately. The president probably has more immediate information than do I. Hopefully, all of these soldiers suffered nothing we see on Saturdays and Sundays in football games, and they'll be returned to duty in a matter of days.
Okay, I got it. And lastly, just on the global front, the president, there's a big push in Africa to keep our anti-terror effort going. You know, we've suffered the casualties in Kenya. It's always dangerous. You know the men and women who fight. I got a chance to meet a lot of them, too. You're a guy who joined the infantry when you had anything, the world at your feet. You decide to put on the camouflage. Do you think we have we need to have a presence in Africa, continue to fight Islamic extremism there?
Brian, I do. You've always got to evaluate the costs and the benefits. In many countries, we have very small footprints, sometimes just the defense attaché working out of the embassy with other embassy personnel. Obviously, the Department of Defense and the Department of State measure those risks constantly to make sure that they can mitigate them. But the best way to counteract terror attacks is to nip them in the bud where they're happening before they grow into major attacks on our shores, or like the attacks you saw at Kenya that threatened Americans as well.
Senator Tom Cotton, thanks for a few minutes. Sadly, this is the most exciting thing you're going to do today. A little bit later, you are going to sit for 10 to 12 hours again, and you can't even use your phone.
Ron Kilmeade is definitely better than Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler.
Thank you very much. Can we make that a promo, Allison? Can we get on that right away? Thanks, Senator.
It's a low bar.
I know. Thank you. Appreciate it. When we come back, joining us.